Hi everyone, and welcome to the video presentation for Module 4, Key Signatures and Scale Degree Names. So in this video we're going to define the term key signature, learn how to write the sharps and flats of a key signature in the correct order. We'll be able to identify major or minor key signatures, and we'll understand the circle of fifths, and finally, and kind of an unrelated topic, be able to identify each scale degree by its traditional name. Okay, so let's start with what a key signature is. A key signature is a set of sharps or flats written at the beginning of the music that tells you which notes are consistently altered. Okay, so really a key signature is just a shorthand for the sharps and flats that are always used in the scale. So for example, this is the scale of G major, and as you remember from our last couple modules dealing with scales, you need to add an F sharp in order for this to sound like a G major scale. So instead of writing that F sharp every single time, we can use a key signature. And all we do in the key signature is just take the F sharp that's normally in the scale. We don't write it anymore, but we put it at the beginning, and that tells us that all of the Fs are going to be sharped. Okay, and it doesn't matter what octave those Fs are in either. So you could have an F on that lower space on the treble clef, and that would still be sharped. Okay, this is just telling you that anything that has the letter F will be sharped. Okay, here we have an A flat major scale, and you can see that that's a lot of flats to keep writing over and over again. So instead of writing them, over and over again, we can take them and move them to the key signature, and they disappear as accidentals, but they are still flatted because they're in the key signature. So that's just telling you that the notes B flat, E flat, A flat, and D flat are all going to be flatted, are all going to be applied to the notes A, B, D, and E. Okay, you can see that looks pretty normal from the music I'm sure you've seen. All right, so the sharps and flats in the key signature are used throughout the music unless an accidental is used. So if you have a natural in front of something that is normally sharped, you just play the natural. If you have a natural in front of something that is normally flatted, you just make it a natural. If you have a sharp instead of something in front of something that's normally flatted, you play the sharp. You don't raise it a half step from what it would be in the key signature. That would be way too confusing. So you just follow the accidental and do what it says. Okay. All right, so there are 7 key signatures that use sharps. And just like the scales, right, you'll only have sharps or flats. You won't have both. So you can see all the possible key signatures here, and they go from 1 sharp with F sharp all the way over there to 7 sharps where everything is sharped. Okay, each one uses the sharps from a different major scale, and therefore we can use it as kind of a shorthand to refer to a different major key. So for example, that one with 1 sharp is G major, 2 sharps is D, 3 sharps is A, 4 sharps is E, 5 sharps is B, 6 sharps is F sharp, and believe it or not, 7 sharps is the key of C sharp major. That's a fun one. Okay, and remember though, because minor scales are based on the same notes as major scales, right? So remember, a scale like C major has the same notes as A minor. We also use these key signatures to refer to the 7 different minor keys, okay, the ones that share the notes with those major keys. So that scale over there on the left is also E minor, 2 sharps is also B minor, 3 sharps is F sharp minor, 4 sharps is C sharp minor, 5 sharps is G sharp minor, 6 sharps is D sharp minor, and finally that thing with 7 sharps is A sharp minor. And you can see that I'm kind of adopting the sort of the way that the book writes it. So it always puts major keys capital, and it puts minor keys lowercase. Okay, so that's what I did here. All right. So major and minor keys that share a key signature are also called relative keys. We learned that term when we were talking about scales. You'd have the relative minor scale. It's the same thing with keys. You can have a relative minor key, and the topics are related to each other. Okay, and remember, to find the note that the relative scale or the relative key begins on, there's two ways you can look at it. You can go down a step plus one more half step and get to the note that begins the minor scale, or you can go up the scale 6 steps, and that's also the same note. That gives you the note that the minor scale begins on. Okay, so those are the sharp key signatures. Okay, and there are also 7 key signatures that use flats, from 1 flat all the way to 7 flats. Okay, each one uses the flats of a different major scale and therefore refers to a different major key, just like the sharps. The one all the way over there on the left with 1 flat is F major, 2 flats is B flat major, 3 flats is E flat major, 4 flats is A flat major, 5 flats is D flat major, 6 flats is G flat major, and interestingly, 7 flats is C flat major, just like 7 sharps was C sharp major. Music is interesting. Okay, so these key signatures also refer to the relative minor keys, just like the sharps. So F major and D minor share key signature. The one with 2 flats there is for B flat major and G minor. 3 flats also refers to C minor. 4 flats refers to F minor. 5 flats refers to B flat minor. 6 flats refers to E flat minor, and 7 flats refers to A flat minor. Okay. And again, if you want to find the relative minor key, you can either look at the 6th degree of the major scale, or you can go down 1 step plus 1 half step to get to the same note. Okay, so those are the flat key signatures. Let's talk about something pretty important, which is the order of the sharps and flats. Okay, so you can't just put the flats in any random order. They have to be in the correct order. Okay, so the sharps, they go F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, and then E sharp, and then finally B sharp. There's lots of mnemonics that help you memorize that. Ironically, I can't remember any of them right now, but I can let you guys look that up on your own. There are flats, and they have to go in the correct order too, and you'll see a little weird pattern here too. The order of flats is B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, and C flat, and F flat, which, if you look, it's like a mirror image of the order of sharps. Another weird thing about music theory. Again, there are a lot of mnemonics that help you remember that, and you can come up with, you can look those up on your own. I don't remember any right now. Okay, they're always placed on the staff, and they never use ledger lines. So you can see when you're writing the sharps, that A sharp kind of breaks the pattern of going up and then going back down, because we can't write that A sharp above the staff because we'd have to use a ledger line, and that's just not something that's done with sharps. So instead we just lower it an octave so that it's on the staff there. Okay, and the sharps kind of form pattern. They kind of look like 2 parallel lines moving upward until that weird 5th sharp, right? And the flats do the same thing. They look like 2 downward parallel lines like that. So that's another way of kind of remembering, or kind of checking yourself to see if you have the right order. Okay? All right, so the other big thing is the circle of fifths, which is just a way to visualize the number of sharps or flats in each key signature. And that's why the order is so important, because sometimes people, when they're talking about a key signature or a scale, they might just say, this is the key of 1 sharp. I've heard that before, right? Well, you just have to know that that 1 sharp is F sharp, because that's the first one in the order, right? So if they say, oh, this has 3 flats, well then you know that that's the key of E flat, and you know the flats because you've memorized the order of the flats, okay? So people will often do that, and that's why we need to make sure that they're in the correct order. So if you know the correct order, you can use the circle of fifths to help you remember how many sharps or flats are in each key, okay? So the circle of fifths, like its name implies, is a circle. And it's kind of like a clock. It'll circle back in on itself. And there are actually 12 points to it, too. But it starts at the top with the key of C major, also known as A minor, which has no sharps and no flats. as we go to the right, we add sharps. So everything to the right of C on this circle will have one more sharp. And we also go up 5 steps in the C major scale, or well, more generally in the scale that came before, to get to the note that is the next key. So from the key of C, if we go to the right, we're going to go up to G, because that's 5 notes up from C, because we go C, D, E, F, G. So 5 notes up from C is G. And we know that that's the key of 1 sharp, right? So the key of G has 1 sharp, because as we go to the right, we add sharps and we go up by 5th. Okay, if we keep going, 5 notes up from G is D, and we add another sharp to the key signature, so that's going to have 2 sharps in its key signature. 5 notes up from D is A, that'll have 3 sharps in the key signature. 5 notes up from that is E, which will have 4 sharps. 5 notes up from that is B, which will have 5 sharps. And then finally, 5 notes up from B is F sharp, which will have 6 sharps. Notice that I'm also including the relative minors on there, and they also go up by 5th and add a sharp. But I think it's quicker to kind of just memorize what they are relative to their major scales. Okay, so if you keep going, we could go to 7 sharps as well, but I left that one out because no one likes C sharp major. But that is a key, so you could go over one more and get to C sharp major, and that would have 7 sharps. Okay, if you go to the left, we actually go 5 notes down in the previous key, and we add flats instead of sharps. So 5 notes down from C, so if C is at the top, if you go down, the next note down would be B, then you'd have A, then you'd have G, then you'd have F, which is 5 notes down. So the next key is going to be F, and it's going to have 1 more flat than the key of C, so it'll have 1 flat. And then it also has its relative minor of D minor there. If you go down 5 notes in the F major scale, you get to a B flat, which has 2 flats. If you go down 5 notes in the B flat major scale, you get to E flat, which has 3 flats. If you go down 5 notes in the E flat major scale, you get to A flat, which has 4 flats, and so on to D flat major, and then finally to G flat major, which has 6 flats. You can see that I put F sharp and G flat in the same place on the circle. That's because they are the same note. All right, so if you look at the piano, you'll see that if you take F and raise it by a half step, you get F sharp. If you take G and you lower it by a half step, you get G flat, and it's the same note on the piano, so we call that an enharmonic equivalent. Okay, same pitch, but 2 different ways of writing it. Okay, and that's where the circle overlaps, and you could keep going until you got back to, I guess you get to A sharp major, which I don't know what universe you're in at that point, but that's how it would circle back to C. Or sorry, B sharp major. Yeah, that's what it would be. Don't know. But that's why it's a circle, because it could keep going theoretically. Okay. All right, so then some key signature shortcuts. So after you've memorized the circle of fifths, there are some other quicker ways to identify a key signature too. So with sharp keys, the name of the major key is a half step above the last sharp in the key signature. So here we have a key signature with 4 sharps, and our last sharp there is D sharp. So if we think about our keyboard, a half step above D sharp is E, so this is the key of E major. Okay. A trick with flat keys is that the second to last flat in the key signature is the name of the key. This doesn't work for F major because it only has 1 flat. You just have to kind of remember that that's F major. But for this one here, we have 5 flats, and the second to last flat in the key signature is a D flat. So that means that this is the key of D flat major. Okay. So, kind of shifting gears, but this is sort of the last important topic with scales. Each degree of the scale has kind of a traditional name that is sometimes used to refer to that note. And you don't need to really know all of these. They're not that important. But some of them are very important, and you have to know what they're talking about. So let's take the key of F major, for example. I'm going to put these in some kind of weird order, but it will kind of make sense as I explain it. So the first note in the key of F major is F, and we traditionally call that the tonic note. And the tonic is the most important note in our system of music, because that's the note that all the other notes want to go back to. So when you hear the tonic note of the scale, you're hearing the ending of the piece, right? A piece that doesn't end on the tonic will sound like it still needs to keep going. Okay, so this is kind of like the center of gravity for this system of music, right? We call it the tonic. The second most important note is the one that leads back to the tonic, or one of the ones that leads back to the tonic, and we call that the dominant. Okay, and that is a fifth above where the tonic is. So it's the fifth note of the scale here. So in the key of F major, the fifth note is C. On the other side of that, sort of the darker side, a fifth down from F, is another important note, which is the subdominant. And we call it the subdominant because it's the lower, kind of the lower side of the dominant, right? It's kind of the reflection of the dominant note. You can see that I wrote it to the left there. That is scale degree 4, though, because that is B flat. But in this kind of way of looking at music and harmony, it's sort of considered below the tonic. Okay, so those are the kind of the three main areas of harmony and scales: the tonic, the dominant, and the subdominant. Okay, then you have the in-between notes, such as the mediant, which is in between the tonic and the dominant, and that's scale degree 3. We call that the mediant. On the other side, we have a note in between, scale degree 6, and we call that the submediant, because it's like the lower note in between. And then we have two more left, 2 and 7. 2 is the one that nobody knows what to do with, so we give it a weird name, which is supertonic, and all that means is that it's above tonic. And then probably the one that's used most often besides tonic is the leading tone, which is scale degree 7. And in ear training, you'll call that T to do, right? That's another important relationship in music. The tendency of the leading tone, scale degree 7, to resolve up to the tonic. Okay, and it has another name which I don't know if anybody uses, but in a minor key, since it's possible to have a seventh degree of the scale, which is a whole step away from the tonic, we would call that a subtonic note. But that's kind of weird. I don't think you would ever really use that. It's one of those things that like exists in theory, but probably not that useful to really know. It's more useful to know that the leading tone is a half step below tonic, even in a minor key, right? That's why we have a harmonic minor scale and a melodic minor scale. So that the seventh note of those scales is called the leading tone still, and that's much more important to remember and to know. Okay, so there you go. I hope that was enjoyable to watch. If you have any questions about this, you can post it on the forum, or you can save it for our Zoom session, or you can email me. I'd be happy to answer anything that you have. All right, great. Well, thanks for watching, and have a good night.